Hey, welcome to another episode of Around the Piano. We've got a real special guest we're going to introduce in just a minute. But first, I want to reach out and talk to our buddy behind the camera here. Hey, Nick, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Tim. I'm doing good. Just enjoying the amazing humidity of the Southwest.
Yeah, I think we skipped spring, went right from late winter right into summer weather here.
Oh, yes, we did. But, I got to do a little camping before it got too bad, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, that's right. You and Jude took off for a few days and kind of re-energized. And,
Yep. Back to it now.
Well, that's good. Well, I like to go camping at Camp Holidome myself. Yeah. Yeah, it's where it's all inside.
Oh, yeah. I see.
And the water is a swimming pool, not a lake.
There you go.
But there's no mosquitoes. I don't run into mosquitoes or ticks or anything like that at Camp Holidome. So it's all that good. Hey, I want to remind everybody to 216 Creative Studios is bringing you this broadcast as long as many others. Why don't you go to YouTube or wherever you get your podcast? But be sure to like, share, and subscribe and ring that bell so you get notifications on the next upcoming episodes. And also, I want to thank Piano Trends Music, my favorite music store, where this time of year we're starting to look at school band rentals already, believe it or not. And we've got all the instruments, the best prices in the entire Chicagoland area, along with the best service. So check us out at pianotrends.com. All right. So, Nick, let's bring our guest aboard. We want to welcome renowned concert pianist Jeffrey Biegel aboard today. Yay.
3, 2.
Hey, all right. Well, thank you again. We want to welcome and bring aboard our very special guest today. Nick, let's bring aboard Jeffrey Biegel, renowned concert pianist. And we got a lot to talk about. So let's bring him aboard and get going.
Hello.
Hey, Jeff, welcome.
Hey, good to be here.
It's awesome having you here. It's funny how we came together to get to know each other just a little bit when we had our shared connection there. We had Melissa Manchester on a few weeks ago, and then you reached out and said, "Hey, I know that woman."
It was such a great
you
show.
Evidently are very good friends, and you've worked with her on, I believe, her project Awake, which we want to hear about too.
Yes.
But before we do, give us a little background. Tell people who don't know who Jeffrey Biegel is. Tell us about yourself.
Well, very simple. I just grew up in a very traditional middle-class family in Long Island. My father was a captain in the New York City Police Department. He was actually the youngest one appointed at the time, and his father was a lieutenant, my grandfather. And my mom raised 4 kids, and she used to sing a lot in the house. So I listened to a lot of singing. She had a very high coloratura voice, which was very beautiful. So I heard singing. My father loved music. He loved Gershwin. He loved Beethoven. It's very interesting. And my oldest sister, she played piano. And I used to imitate what she would do. I don't know if she appreciated that, but she knows now, of course, we talk about it, how that inspired me. It was those were the beginning of the Yellow Brick Road for me. And my grandmother's sister played piano. And everybody had a piano in the house, of course, back then. And so I started lessons when I was about 7, but I was actually born not able to hear, which was a strange situation. And I had surgery. Yeah, I mean, I didn't speak like most kids by age 3 were speaking. I was not. I was grunting and groaning and whatever. I don't know. I wanted something. I didn't know how to ask for it. And finally, one surgeon noticed it and called my name. I didn't answer and said, he can't hear. And so I had the surgical laryngotomy. They poked the eardrums, released the fluid, and whatever. I remember seeing it. I was like floating on the ceiling watching this thing. It was a little funky. I still remember it, but who knows? Sure. And then I just started to doodle around the piano, playing little songs with the right hand. And then my left hand was like, do something. So I started to play a C with my pinky finger would play the C, and then I would take E and G and try. I'd make triad. I go C and the third, then I'd go back and forth to the D minor chord because I didn't know what a dominant chord was. Like that was far away. G was far from C. So I just played C, little chord, and then D, and then the minor third above it. So that was my resting chord and my non-restless chord. I just knew to do that with songs because every song had them. So I was
Sure.
able to do it. And I started lessons and plowed through this John Sham series, the green book, the red book, the blue book, the purple book.
Oh, you
I
betcha.
did all
You
that.
betcha.
I loved it. And now when my wife teaches, I hear all these things. I'm like, God, these books are going to outlive all of us. It's great. So,
They absolutely will.
and I hear the kids playing all these songs. I did that. I did that. So I went through all that 2.5 years or so and had a wonderful teacher. He was like the head of the music department for a town called Bethpage in Long Island. And he used to teach my sister, and then he taught me. And he didn't want to teach me until I was 7. He thought, yeah, he's too young. Let him learn to be disciplined in school. So I was in, I don't know, 2nd grade.
Sure.
And I went then to, and he was Carl Hupperich, great guy. We stayed in touch. He came to my concerts way later on. Then Morton Estrin, the wonderful teacher, taught Seth Rudetsky. We were in the same theory class. Seth from Sirius XM Broadway. He's a brilliant pianist, knows everything about every Broadway show ever, ever, ever. And so Seth and I still stay in touch. But Morty was our teacher. He also taught Billy Joel when he was young. He was a really good teacher, great pianist. And I learned from him from 10 to 16. And then I went to Adele Marcus, who was the main go-to at Juilliard. She was, you're going to study with Adele Marcus. Oh my God. Yeah, because she was tough. She was very tough. But nobody knew what she did. They admitted they knew she was a genius. She was just a genius. She couldn't even handle it. But here she was. I was a 16-year-old kid, and here she is 70. And she was a pupil of Joseph Levine, great pianist, and Arthur Schnabel. She studied with in Germany, in Berlin. Schnabel goes back to Beethoven. I mean, oh my gosh. So, of course she was going to be tough. She was carrying this lineage that was unprecedented and uncompromising. So I learned a lot. Coming up, I'm recording 3 Beethoven sonatas I've wanted to do for years and years. And I take with me all that tradition, and they mean so much to me to be able to do these. Now, finally, I just turned 65, so it's the right time to record them. I think it's good to do it now. So that was 16 through Juilliard, high school and college. And then I just started to enter competitions and win some, lose some, made my debut in New York at age 24. And then I started to build a career that's just so unorthodox. But looking back, you look in the rearview mirror sometimes, you say, why did I do that? I was doing things that were just so unorthodox. I mean, I was like 28, 26 years old, cold calling conductors at home, calling orchestras, trying to get myself known and learning music. But then I started to learn music. I was 12 when Morty Estrin gave me a piece of music written by a composer, Meyer Kupferman, and one of the leading American composers. And he said, I don't have time to learn this. You learn it. And I learned it. I was 12 years old. My parents took me to Manhattan to play this new sonata, which is on my website, the Sonata Mysticos, 1973. I played it for him, and getting a composer's feedback, well, I think those were the seeds for what would come later. And then just later I had all this repertoire. I played Prokofiev's Second Concerto when I was like 21.
Right. Yeah.
The Prokofiev 3, Rachmaninoff 3. I was playing what everybody was playing at Juilliard. That's what you had to do. But I got bit by the bug called composers that are alive. And to the 90s, I got to work with Lalo Schifrin and recorded his Piano Concerto of the Americas with him conducting. We did Beethoven Emperor Concerto together with his orchestra in California. So he was amazing. Lalo Schifrin was amazing. And I got to meet Norwegian composers, Russian composers. And by the turn of the century, I created a project to have as many orchestras as possible for a new work to celebrate the millennium. And that was with Ellen Tafe-Swillich. She was the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize in music. And the Millennium Fantasy Project took off. We had 27 orchestras in 25 states. And then I decided, let's do more. And that began over a quarter century of commissioning almost 30 new pieces. And that's basically, I compose also. I arrange music. I've recorded Christmas albums, Bach albums, Chopin album, whatever, new concertos. That's me. I'm just everything that is the uncommon, unorthodox thing to do as a pianist, just doing projects that, I mean, that's because how I learned how to communicate when I was young.
Sure.
I didn't speak. So my way of speaking has always been different. So that's me. Now we can go on from there.
Yeah, and I find it fascinating. And I was reading about the 27 orchestras that you worked with. Pretty it was, I am assuming, all at one time at
Yeah,
the New York City,
within a
turn
few
of the
years.
century.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How
We
did
just
that
like
all come together? How did that begin?
it begins by approaching a composer, and it was Lucas Foss, who I asked about Ellen, and he sent me to her, and I told her about my idea. I want to commission a new work for the Millennium. I want you to be the composer. She said, well, send me some of your recordings. I sent her a performance I did of Leroy Anderson concerto, some Beethoven, Lalo Schifrin's concerto, whatever, different things. And she said, okay. And then you get into the nitty gritty. Then there's the business, how much she charges. So she was charging a certain amount, and I had to raise all that money. I had to raise her fee, copying costs, whatever. So you go to all the orchestras and you kind of divvy up based on their budgetary level how much you could ask them to put toward the commission, and raise money from foundations, people I knew, donors, whatever. They'd say, well, fill this out, send it, we'll run it through the board. I raised her fee. I got all the orchestras, covered half the country. And after that, I decided, let's do 50 states. So it was like September, October of 2000. My friend Don Pippin, who was conductor of Radio City, and he conducted the original Broadway pit orchestras of MAME and Oliver back in the early 60s, and the recordings. And he sent me to Charles Strauss. I got to Don also because his first teacher was Evelyn Miller in Knoxville, and she hosted me for a concert to play in the Bijou Theater in Knoxville after I won a competition in 1985. Another story. So Don's been a great friend. We've worked together in Hartford Symphony, St. Louis. He was great. He was just great. So Charles Strauss I spoke with. I said, I want Concerto America. I want to do a 50-state, the first 50-state project ever in this country, meaning at least one orchestra in each state. So he says, okay, I'll do it. It'll be like a musical autobiography of my life. He studied with Aaron Copland, and he wrote Broadway shows like Annie and Bye Bye Birdie, and he did television work, All in the Family, and he was a serious composer. He wrote pop music, Born Too Late from the late 50s.
Sure.
So he agreed to write it for me. And he told me his fee, which was not much. And he's like, I don't really need the money, but I need to pay the copying costs and hire a copyist. I got a copyist for him. And, we got all that done. I raised the money with some grants. And I got the Boston Pops to say, we'll do the premiere June of 2002, and the Honolulu Symphony. Then 9/11 happened. And I just didn't think it was the right time to do it. We can't celebrate America when we're trying to recover. And so I put that 50-state project away, but I did those two concerts. They got good reviews in the Boston Globe and in Hawaii, and we left it alone,
Yeah.
And so I decided, all right, one day we'll do 50 states again, whenever, I don't know. But then I did projects later after 9/11. I got to Lowell Lieberman and Richard Danielpour and Lucas Richmond, lots of wonderful projects. And actually the first projects, bringing in non-US orchestras into a commission. So I had Canada and Germany in some of these projects. And then came composers later on, Ken Fuchs, Jake Runestad, Christia Fanitas, P.D. Cuba. And we just built more projects to bring. I just felt like it was a need for us to have new music by American composers. And I actually have an Iranian composer did a piece for me. And then I always loved pop music. I grew up with all the records. I grew up with the Monkees and the Beatles and Melissa Manchester and everybody. And Peter Tork wrote a piece for me. At first he said, I can't do it. And he said he could do it. And he did do it. It was a quirky, wonderful piece. But here's Peter Tork from the Monkees. I have all your records.
I remember when we were chatting on the phone before a couple of weeks ago, you were telling me about the Peter Tork connection, because I had a Peter Tork connection out in California that I told you about. But tell me about how the Peter Tork connection came about and how that just give us that story.
So I was asked to play Rhapsody in Blue for the first Long Island Music Hall of Fame inaugural event. Billy Joel was there too. We talked for an hour. He's just brilliant. So Peter was there too. Was he inaugurating Jimmy Webb maybe, or Jimmy was inaugurating Billy? I don't remember the whole thing, And Jimmy Webb's another great guy. He wrote a piece for me. I had to get something from him. He's one of the great tunesmiths ever.
Oh,
And
ever.
so
Yeah.
Peter was there, and we got to talking. He says, I love how you play the Rhapsody in Blue, this and that. And he's talking about Schumann and Janacek and all these composers. I'm like, you know all this? He says, yeah, but yeah, I mean, I grew up with this, like Melissa. And
Yeah.
that's another story. We'll talk about how that happened. And so I said, how'd you like to write something? He says, oh, I can't. And then he finally did. And he had the help of a orchestrator in the Hartford area, which Peter lived up in Connecticut, was a student of Ken Fuchs, one of my Juilliard chums, who wrote a trio for me and a piano concerto. That one that got the Grammy with London Symphony. The spiritualist, Ken is great. So Ken's student helped Peter do the orchestration. And it was a fun piece. Did it with Orchestra Kentucky, with Jeffrey conducting, and they gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. That was a wonderful setup that Jeffrey did in Kentucky. It's in Bowling Green, Kentucky. He gave Neil Sedaka Lifetime Achievement Award, performed his concerto. Keith Emerson, Jimmy Webb, Peter Tork. I mean, it's really a wonderful event. So Peter wrote the piece, and you could actually find it somewhere. I forget the name of the company, but it's out there. It's called Moderato Monotropo. It's a quirky piece, but it's really cool. So that was the Peter connection. And we stayed in touch. You know, I knew every word to every song of every record that they had. I had all the records. My oldest sister had the records. I still have them and have them in CDs too. So he's no longer with us, unfortunately. But what a great legacy of him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and everybody you mentioned there obviously has a great musical legacy they go through. But moving on to Melissa Manchester, tell us how that came about with Awake. Obviously, you two knew each other before you began that project.
It was during COVID, and I saw she posted Awake with the chorus, and I would listen. I thought, what a unique voice of music that's different from all the songs that I knew from her career. I mean, she's over 50 years of performing, and being hooked up with Bette Midler and Barry Manilow. I love these people, and Clive Davis. I mean, she's just a legend. So she was on social media, and I wrote to her and loved her music, and then I was doing, during COVID, every week I was doing a concert online at home on YouTube or whatever, kind of just to make people happy, make me happy. It kept us sane. But I played all these recitals. I hadn't picked up all this recital repertoire in years because everything out there is concertos now. It's very few solo recitals. So I was playing all my solo repertoire, and it was invigorating, and it was very soulful, and just helped me become a better musician at what I did, because you need the solo rep. It's very all-encompassing, you know what I mean? And so I wrote to her and I said, would you like to attend my recital online? And she did. She went on there. You know, YouTube had the chat sessions. David Foster was on there.
Yeah.
Wow. He's like,
talk about legends. Yeah.
With God. Yeah, well, yeah. And he's very, he puts on the David Foster hat, you know, but he's humble. And he really bows down to the greats. Beethoven, his God, his idol, Beethoven. And I've learned a lot from David about a lot, you know, just stick to itness. And if that doesn't work, try something else. And work ethic, and just really do your best. Give it, if you think you're giving a lot, give more. Really hold a high standard, really, and keep it. Don't let anybody compromise that standard. So he's been really there for me, even if I don't talk to him all the time, you know. So he was saying, hey, Melissa, they're chatting on the, I don't even know if she saw what he wrote. But then after the concert, I wrote to her on one of the social media. I think social media is great. It just broke down all the walls. You know, we could talk to people and make things happen, you know. And I said to her, I hope you like the recital. Just, I loved it. I loved the Beethoven. I did the Waldstein Sonata or the Passionata, or I don't know which one. I said, "Oh, do you know the piece?" And she was like, "What do you mean? Do I know the piece?" I mean, I could just hear her saying it. She writes, "What do you mean? Do I know the piece?" You know, I grew up in a classical house. My
Your
father was
father.
bassoonist in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. He was also up in Western New York with the orchestra there, and he's. We heard this music all the time. I used to go every week to the Metropolitan Opera rehearsals, and I would be off stage and, okay. Eeks, take my foot out of my mouth. Yeah. And I like finding a voice in pop people that they had when they were younger or didn't realize they have. Most of the time, they're like, I can't do it. I think you could. If you could do the pop music like that, yeah, you could do this if you're
That's
rooted
right.
in it. And gave her some breathing space and raised the funds and got her a grant. And she brought the orchestrator in and she gave me a 5-movement piece. It's a 5 or 6. And each movement is a character. It's a personality. And it's really good. I really feel very fulfilled playing this music because it's different from everything else, which is what you want. And I like it. And the audiences, they like it. They're like, I didn't know that about you. And I noticed that as pop stars become 70-ish, well, I'm 65 and I've been feeling like this for years. It's how do I want to be remembered, or what's my legacy, or what haven't I done? So Jimmy Webb wrote the Nocturne, dedicated it to his wife. She's left-handed. He called it Nocturne for Lefty. So I said, well, let's call it Nocturne, because if we say Nocturne for Lefty, they'll think it's a left hand alone with orchestra. Well, we're gonna be careful, people.
It's a very
Think,
valid
oh,
point.
yeah, and he agreed. He agreed. He's great. Oh, his songs, they're timeless. And this piece is gorgeous. This Nocturne is absolutely beautiful. And so Jeff Tyzik orchestrated it. Jeff's one of the greats. And so I played it a few times. And Melissa's piece, Neil Sedaka, that's another story. God bless his soul. I can't believe he's gone. His Manhattan Intermezzo. I got to him actually when I started studying with Adele Marcus. She said I was his teacher. And they were grooming him to be like the next Van Cliburn. And Rubinstein heard him play. Arthur Rubinstein said it's gorgeous, beautiful. Chopin Ballade, the first, was like the best I ever heard. He was a great pianist. You could hear Neil play at age 16 on WQXR's website, WQXR.org. Just type his name in. There's a couple of interviews, 1956 and then 2000 something. And he played, but then he became a songwriter. And it was actually when I was visiting David Foster for the first time, Neil called. Talk about fate, the Beshert I believe in. And he called. And then we met up at some event that David had a singer doing a showcase, and Neil was there. And we talked. And it was another event, and I played at a big Foster Bocelli event. And dinner, and David had us all do something. Of course, he didn't tell me ahead of time, which I'm grateful for, because I would have been shaking in my boots for 3 days. He's like, he just comes up to you at the event. You're playing. I'm like, what? He says, I'll play a Chopin or something. So I did the Chopin A-flat Polonaise, and then I got to talk to Neil after, and he says, I'm writing a piano concerto. This was like 2009, 8. He says, I'm writing a concerto, Manhattan Intermezzo. I'll let you know when it's done. And he did. It was like 2010, 11, something like that. And he sent me the music, and it was, he had already recorded what he wrote with London Philharmonic and sent it to me. And I said, I'd like to play this, but the piano part, I think it's good. But I think what you're wanting to do with it is we could fill it out. Just put more gravy in it. Just make it Chopin, Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff. I could fill it out. Would you can you give me your baby and just let me watch them for a week? So he says, yes, but bring it to me when you're done. I'm probably like, it's like bring me the broomstick of the Witch of the West. Okay. So I did. and it was actually Jeff Reed with Orchestra Kentucky. And he says, I want to do this. This was May, June. He says, let's do it in September. We'll bring Neil. Will he come? It was also, so I went to Manhattan to see Neil and played it for him.
Yeah.
I wasn't scared. It was daunting because I wasn't sure if he would like it or hate what I did and think, oh, you did too much. And I'm playing it, and he's like, oh, that's beautiful. He goes, oh, play it like that. Don't change a note. Just do that, please. And then he said something to me that was a business savvy line, but it was the highest compliment I ever heard. He says, it's a feather in my cap. That's what he said. And I looked at him and I said, we come from the same roots. We both studied with the Delmarks. I said, I know your language. I know what you wanted. And I'm happy that I was able to take it to that next stage. So I played it. He was there and he says, play it. I recorded it. He let me record my version. Mine is not published. I have a lot of extra notes in it, but it fills it out to be a little bit more of I want to hear a piano concerto kind of thing. So, and we stayed friends, and that was that. So, all these, wonderful people. Elton John is one I would like to. I've tried.
Go through Billy.
And Billy's another. His classical too. I mean, I did arrange some of that for piano and orchestra. I had an orchestrator come in, and I played it a few times, and then he just said, it's not, let's leave it. He left it. We never revisited. It's okay.
No.
That's a good piece too. There's a lot of people out there to tap into.
Well, yeah, there definitely is. And what I find, I love hearing these stories, because what's fascinating is everybody you've mentioned there, we have either provided pianos for their concerts when they're in the Chicago area, or I've tuned for all of them. And there's just they're known for their pop side, but very few people realize that their classical roots come through, and that's what makes them as popular as they are. Another one, Richard Carpenter is known for his pop writing.
I tried him. Tried several years ago, but that wasn't something. Maybe now he would. I know it's like I said, they get older. Maybe. I mean, they know me as the classical side. So seeing me do the pop stuff's like, oh, it's not pop music really, but it's a different voice of these pop stars. A Dick Tunney, Nashville-based Christian music composer, arranger. He wrote the Peanuts concerto for me. I had to go through the Peanuts worldwide, Charles Schultz's son, Craig, and Lee Mendelson Film Productions. They own the Guaraldi catalog. So he did the Guaraldi, the 3-movement concerto, Burt Bacharach concerto, the Monkees concerto. I'm actually trying. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm working it, and the guy's not writing back. I'm calling it Forever Elvis, the concerto for his 50th anniversary of his passing, and Dick Tunney wants to write it. I've been knocking that. I'm knocking on that door so much as a hole in it, and at some point you have to realize if they're not responding, it's because maybe it's not something they want to do.
Maybe, but I think you need to keep following the advice that you got from your friend David Foster. And never give up. I'm
not going to give up. I will. I mean, I actually ended up sending an email to Dear All, with the idea, and we have a whole list of it. Dick would write a very beautiful piece. I'll let it sit a little, but it's a year from August, so Dick could write quickly. He's very fast. I mean, it could get done, and it can get premiered at Graceland. I went to Graceland and just felt it there when I went there last month.
That'd be a wonderful thing to happen.
Oh gosh, yeah, because there's a lot of good piano stuff in those songs.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. I've never been to Graceland, and I finally got to play with the Memphis Symphony. We did the Peter Boyer Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue. So I thought, let me take a few hours and go there. It was
fascinating. I bet it would be easier to name the orchestras you have not played with than to name all of the ones that you have played with.
There's many I haven't, and hope
Yeah.
to someday. But you go where life takes you. Just I'm still building the Rhapsody National Initiative. I have 71 orchestras in this.
Yeah.
It's the
Tell us,
largest.
tell us more about that, because I know that fascinated me too. I was reading about that, and I think it's it's just a fascinating project that I know you're working on.
It's a 5-year, 50-state project. I can't play
Yeah.
them all in a short time. But because of America 250, we extended it, and some of the orchestras that wanted to do it, we couldn't fit in this 26, 27 years. So with 27, 28, and in the conductor score, before you see the first page of music, on the left side is a description of the project. So, okay, I'll try to make it brief. 2018 or so, I'm thinking, yeah, the centennial of Rhapsody in Blue is going to be upon us soon, 2024. But what do I do? I mean, I want to do something. I love Rhapsody in Blue, but everybody's going to play Rhapsody in Blue. So what can I do that's different? Oh, living composer. How about a new Rhapsody? That's a kind of a tip of the hat to the Gershwin, but taking music from that time to now. Because, when Gershwin was around, it was Broadway shows and songs, and, he was a songwriter.
Sure.
Jimmy Webb. He was a Jimmy Webb. And his famous theme, ba-da-da-dum, ba-ba-ba-bum, it's a song. And he didn't write that originally for Rhapsody in Blue. He had something else. A few weeks before the premiere, he brought the music to Ferdinand Grofé, who helped him orchestrate the rest of it. He says, no, that's no good. What else you got? And he started playing other stuff. Then he played bum, 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 that song. He says, oh, I kind of like that. And so George said, well, yeah, I wrote that in 2019, like 5 years ago. And it's, I never did anything with it. He says, well, let me sleep on it. So Grofé called him the next day and said, that's what's going in. That's how that happened. So I wanted to do something different. So I approached a few composers. They said, nah, it's not for me. And and I went to Peter Boyer, whose Ellis Island Dream of America has had over 300 performances since it was first premiered about 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And he said, no. I said, why? And he says, I don't want to be compared to George Gershwin. It's very valid. I get it. But I thought, no, you won't be, And he had not written anything for me, and I wanted something from him. I thought this would be the piece.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I don't know. I said, look, people will compare you anyway. So what's the difference? Forget about that. Think about the future. Is this a piece you want to have around? I said, let's go back. Okay. George Gershwin goes to meet Maurice Ravel, the great French composer, pianist in Paris. Okay. George was already a good orchestrator, but he wanted to be better. So he said to Maurice Ravel, I really want to orchestrate like you. You're the main one. I mean, the pictures in an exhibition, Mussorgsky and all kinds of things. He's a great composer. He orchestrated the Mussorgsky. And Maurice Ravel said, I hear that you really are successful in America. May I ask how much money you earned last year? And George Gershwin told him how much money he made. Maurice Ravel looked at him and says, wow, maybe I should be studying with you then. Yeah, but he said something to George Gershwin that made sense. He says, Mr. Gershwin, here's a bit of advice. Maybe you should think about being a first-rate Gershwin rather than a second-rate Ravel. Be your own orchestrator. You're pretty good, Okay. So I said to Peter Boyer, I don't want you to be compared to George Gershwin, and you're not going to orchestrate or write like him. So instead of being worried about being a comparison to him, why don't you be a first-rate Boyer and not a second-rate Gershwin? There you go.
Good advice. Good advice.
I just figured if it worked for him, it'll work for me.
Yeah, so, why not? Yeah.
It worked. So we didn't have a title yet. I was thinking of titles. That's the Rhapsody in. And then I looked at the American flag. And I thought, I looked online, nothing written about the American flag, except you're a grand old flag and Star Spangled Banner. And then Antonin Dvorak in the 1890s wrote the American flag, cantata for chorus and orchestra. Nothing else. I looked, I searched. Unless there's something I don't know about, nothing. I said, how could it be? I said, okay, Rhapsody in the red, white, Rhapsody in the red, white, and get rid of the Rhapsody in red, white, and blue. Get rid of AND, put the little sign and Rhapsody in red, white, and blue. That's it. So I told him. He says, okay. Then came the business side. How much is it going to cost? And how to raise the money. Then COVID hit. Like, I can't ask orchestras for money. Okay. Interesting thing happened. I had been teaching piano at a 50-year-old piano camp started by Rosamund van der Linden. And her daughter, she's still around, her daughter Polly took it over. So I was teaching piano to adults going to piano camp. It's a great place. It's up in Bennington, Vermont. They call it Sonatina Piano Camp because over the summers is how it started. They did the kids. They still have it. And Polly's son is running it now. So I was teaching there, and there was a wonderful, interesting camper. And his name's John. And he had one eye. He's still around. He's still a supporter. Let's get to that. And I played Rhapsody in Blue in the faculty recital I gave. And he loved jazz and he loves Gershwin and everything. That's his favorite piece, Rhapsody in Blue. He says, how do I get that music? How do I find that? I said, well, it's the Alicia Zizzo solo piano version with all the missing parts that Gershwin played, but they cut out in the publications, which are back now in the critical edition. And he loved Gershwin. He says, what else are you doing? I said, and this was right before this all happened. I said, well, I'm putting together this project to commemorate the Rhapsody in Blue centennial. And it'll be Peter Boyer, Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue. He says, well, send it to me. So here's my email. Send me what you're doing. I said, okay. I just thought that was very kind. So I sent him the project, what it's about. Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue. It was not 50 states in mind. It was just whatever it would be. And he writes back and says, how much money do you need? I told him. He says, well, we can give you this much, we'll give you half now and half it to the new year. I wrote back and I said, who are you? This is a man who was going to a piano camp in Vermont, liking Gershwin. And he told me who he is. He's on the board of this, he's on the board of that, and the foundation. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh. I told Peter, he's like, oh, this is serious. I said, oh, yes. So I raised a lot of money outside of all that. Of course, it wasn't enough. But that's how this happened. And I started using social media during COVID. Mm-hmm. And I thought, who knows are we going to make it through this? I mean, people were dying left and right. If I get through this and survive, and orchestras do, and I get to play this piece, let's do it. So I started using social media and Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue, getting orchestras involved, signing on. They were coming in, coming in. Built up 5 orchestras, 10 orchestras, 15 orchestras, 20 orchestras. I thought, maybe I'll bring back the 50-state project. Maybe I'll take it off the dusty shelf. So I started to call it the 50-state project. Let's see how far we can go. And every time an orchestra would join, I'd say, welcome, NY, New York. Welcome, New York, to the project. I didn't call it Rhapsody National Initiative until later on. And then we had 2 orchestras in one state. They said, well, how can you have 2 premieres? I said, there are no buy-ins. This is the first 50-state project for orchestras without paying a fee to the composer. Mm-hmm. So they call that without buy-ins, to buy into the project. So I raised all the money. And we had more orchestras joining. It finally became pretty close to 50. And it was January of 23. It did not have a world premiere yet. I thought, what are we going to do? Finally, the CEO of Utah Symphony said, send me the materials. And we opened the Deer Valley Music Festival in Utah 2023 with the Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue. And Peter was there. It was outdoor event. And what I noticed was that everybody stood up. Everywhere I ended up playing this piece, between administrations, and mostly in the latter, the whole audience stood up after this piece. And there's a part in the solo section, not the it starts solo, and then its orchestra comes in. Also in E major, like Gershwin's da 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 dum bum bum, beautiful theme. Peters is more cinematic because movies became the norm. So movie scores and movie composers became prominent. So his is very spacious. You could imagine flying through, passing Mount Rushmore, Grand Canyon, the mountains, Niagara Falls, whatever. And it's a gorgeous section. And we had finally gotten the 50th state to join was Rhode Island, Peter's hometown state. So the Rhode Island Philharmonic joined. It was tough to get some orchestras. I was emailing and calling community orchestras, youth orchestras, volunteer orchestras, even high schools to try to get some of the states in that were absent. And so we have, this is the first project that has top tier orchestras, mid-level orchestras, university, community, and 3 youth orchestras at a summer camp, actually. It's really showing America at its best. Musicians of all kinds, all levels. And the piece is very much embraced. Gosh, every performance you see the whole room stand. And so we had questions and answers once, and somebody said, "What does it feel like to play a new piece like that?" And everybody in the room stands. I said, "No president ever felt that good."
Nice. Very nice.
It's something that you're reaching every American on the level they want to be reached, and it's a feeling that it's beyond. Actually, even, I mean, to be a president of a country is wonderful. This is something beyond that. This is really using music. I was talking with someone the other day. I said, growing up I grew up in the 60s, and figure the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s to an extent, we had a lot of tough times. There were a lot of tough times. Vietnam War. What did we have that people related to or helped them get through these times? The first answer that person said was music. And I listened to a lot of Sirius XM, 60s, 50s, 70s, the music. The music was great. The songs, and just so great. And those songs meant something to people going through the times of their lives that were a great challenge. And now, of course, I mean, there's probably a lot of, good stuff going on. I'm not as in tune with it, but I do remember those decades.
Sure.
And they really, really were great songs, great music going on. So, music is always, to me, I was not able to speak English starting out. It was musical vibrations I heard. So music, the language of music, was always my first native tongue.
And I think that's true for everybody, whether they admit it or not, because what really goes on, music is something that no matter what language you speak verbally, everybody can understand the language of music. It's gonna touch everybody in a little bit different way, but it's a feel. It's not just playing it or listening to it. You feel the music, and that's when you make that connection.
And that's what connects us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And maybe something like what you're doing with the Rhapsody Red, White, and Blue can restore even some more patriotism among Americans. It would be a great thing if it does something like that.
Exactly. Well, it has been. It's not going to change the economy of the world, but it certainly is. It's something that brings us together. I mean, that's the best we could do. It's the best we could do. Yeah. It does. It has a lot of uniting factors to it. Yeah. So, But I'm going to be sorry when that ends. That's why I'm working now on things for 27, 28, 28, 29. You know, you got to.
Yeah, let's tell us a little bit about that, because I mean, Joel, we're up against the clock, so we're running a little short on time. We're definitely going to have you back for another episode down the road.
Let's do it.
There's a lot of stories here. But what are the upcoming projects that you want people to know about right now?
Well, I'm hoping conductors and orchestras watch this, because the things that I'm working on now, I like taking classic pieces and giving them a facelift. There's a composer from Pennsylvania, Daniel Pertu, and he's gaining a lot of steam now. A lot of people are starting to know who he is. And about 3 years ago, I premiered a new piece that he wrote for me. I said, I want a new planets, like Gustav Holst's Planets, but I want it to be about the planets and the science of the planets, climates and temperatures. But I want to be the space traveler. I want the pianist to be the space traveler. So it's a concerto, piano, and orchestra. So the planets, I call it the Planet's Odyssey. And it's a great piece. So I asked him to write a new Carnival of the Animals, but for one piano and orchestra rather than two. All new animals, starting in the sea, then the land, then the sky, to the American bald eagle. I want that. So he's writing that now. And for poems, like later on, after Saint-Saëns wrote the Carnival of the Animals, Ogden Nash wrote poems for each animal, which have been narrated by many people. I said, we need poems. So I was able to get commissioned a whole new set of poems for all the new animals by Anne Hampton Calloway. Can't get better. They're incredible. So Anne wrote the poems, and there's a few people that want to narrate. I have permission to say one, not the other. Lucy Arnaz Luckenbill. Lucy and Desi's daughter, wants to narrate them. So I'm looking for an orchestra to premiere that. The other piece is a new pictures in an exhibition called Visions and an Exhibition. And currently Stuart Goodyear wants to write that, and a fabulous composer and pianist. And I was able to get a few interesting works in there, all new paintings, different painters of different demographics and whatever. And one of them is by Willard Midgett, who's the late Willard Midgett. He's the father of Anne Midgett, a wonderful journalist and former critic of the Washington Post. And also Eve Plum. Remember her, Jan Brady?
Oh, I sure do.
I love Eve's work. And we had a Statue of Liberty painting ending the piece. And I looked at her Statue of Liberty. I said, I have to get that. Oh, she's amazing. So we stayed in touch over the years through social media, and I wrote to her about this, and we made it work out. Signed an agreement that it's used just for this piece, and you could see it on the screen, no reproductions. So her Statue of Liberty, I love it because hers looks like you could see it like you're on a boat coming from somewhere else and approaching it. And you could see it in the mist, but you're not quite there yet. And there's this feeling of, through the mist, I see that Statue of Liberty. There's hope, there's freedom, a whole new world. So I see it that way, and I think it's a perfect ending to this piece.
And I think it's a perfect ending to our podcast as well. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. We definitely, maybe sometime this fall, let's get back together and recap and see what else is new is going on. And it's wonderful having you, Jeff. This is wonderful.
Same here. Thank you for having me on and sharing all these fun stories and music yet to come.
Yeah, exactly. Well, jeffreybiegel.com. If you want to see more about Jeff, he's right there on the website. You can scan that QR code up in the upper corner of the page there. And thank you for being with us. We appreciate that. I want to thank everybody out there for being with us on Around the Piano. Remember to smile, be kind, and keep on keeping on.